Suzelle Sandoval, Bellanger, Imakiapi, Damakota, Titoita, Hemataha, Oyate Mitawa. Hello, my name is Suzelle Sandoval Bellanger. I'm Dakota. Prairie Island is my home. I'm a Prairie Island descendant and a Fond du Lac descendant through my mother, and through my father, I'm a White Earth and Bois Forte descendant. I'm interested in this research because of my family. I grew up learning about my local history, and I understood that this was an important opportunity to share that history. In my training for this project, a lot of what I learned was very eye-opening to me. And collectively and individually, these reports are empowering and inspiring. So I'd like to thank MIAC and the University of Minnesota for collaborating on this project. And I'm really thankful to be a part of it. My hope is that the university can learn from our reports and change how they go about their future endeavors with us as tribes. I'd also like to thank Misty Blue and my fellow tribal research fellows. I appreciate you allowing me to learn from you all. I'd like to thank my tribal council at Titawita for their support, and the elders of my community, as well as my ancestors for guiding me in this work. And then a really big thank you to my TIPO office and their support. I greatly appreciate you all. So our research focuses on burial mounds. Prairie Island and our surrounding area has a high population of burial mounds. Coming into this project, I didn't really know a lot about this topic besides what my family taught me. So I reached out to my tribe's TIPO office and I started working with Frankie Jackson. He's very knowledgeable about burial mounds and the research surrounding them. Working with him, I've learned a lot from him. So I'm going to hand it over to him to present our PowerPoint. Thank you. Peter Tonka.
Pidamia Suzelle. And before I get started, I wanted to say thank you to Prairie Island Tribal Council, to Misty and to MIAC for allowing me to play just a small role in this project. And I want to say a special thank you to the fellow researchers from the various tribes who are conducting this really important research. When Suzelle approached our office, it allowed us to have a conversation with her about burial mound reclamation and what that looks like for many tribes today. And I think surprising to Suzelle and to myself was that up until 1985, the university was actively participating in burial mound excavations. And in the late 1980s, the university transferred their archaeological collection over to the Minnesota Historical Society. And so some of our research allowed us to work to focus on those collections that were transferred over to the Minnesota Historical Society. And we're going to offer up recommendations on how the university can help resolve some of the lingering issues that plague tribes in our communities today when it comes to reclamation of burial mounds and burial items that were taken from excavations in the past. And so with that, we'll move into our PowerPoint presentation, and we'll talk a little bit about what is a burial mound, NAGPRA, why it's important, NAGPRA past and current issues as appropriate to Prairie Island. We'll talk about some steps beyond NAGPRA, and we'll introduce you guys to the Dakota Homeland Mapping Project. But before we move on, I think it's important for us to understand a little better how some of this archaeological work gets permitted. So right now, today, there's no set of standards for burial mound assessment work being done in Minnesota. So if I'm an archaeologist and I get hired to do a burial mound assessment on private property, I apply for my archaeological permit, I get that permit, but there are no standards that I have to follow. And so that's problematic on a bunch of levels, but for the TIPOs who have to review these reports as they come in, we see that there's no uniformity and no, I guess, consistency because of the lack of standards. And so we will talk a little bit about how we are approaching that in our Dakota Homeland Mapping Project. And so I don't have control of the slides, but if we can go to slide 3. Burial mounds, how do we explain them? Digging up, and I really like this slide. This is a slide that Suzelle found. Digging up sacred native cultural sites would be the same as digging up Arlington National Cemetery. I mean, we can't explain it any better than that. And so we'll go down to slide 6. Some of the issues we face here at Prairie Island, majority of the issues have to do with protecting burial mounds. As you'll see from this map, there were over 500 burial mounds mapped in the Red Wing area alone. And this map comes from 1913. And to give you guys kind of an idea of the attitude that a lot of settlers had when it came to our burial mound sites, I'm going to share an excerpt with you from a diary entry taken in 1869. Red Wing, an Indian chief, is buried on one of the bluffs here in the city, was named after him. There is as much as 100 of their graves up here on a bluff, and I have been up there and found the ribs of Indians and all sorts of bones. Last spring, the Red Wing boys dug into the chief's grave and found a silver medal given by Harrison to the chief, and they sold it for $75. And then they dug them up, most of them, for things, and took their skulls and put them on bushes and played ball with them till the city authorities ordered them to put the bones all back. And to cover them up, they found beads and scalps and lots of trinkets buried with them. But I could cover dozens of sheets with such stuff. That provides a little insight on the attitude of non-settlers when it comes to our burial sites. Going down to slide 13. When we started examining the archaeological record that is now at the Minnesota Historical Society, we uncovered a couple of different things. There's some really good work being done by staff at the Minnesota Historical Society to reconcile some of these archaeological collections. And I tip my hat to the Lower Sioux Indian community who worked tirelessly the past 2 years on reclamation of burial mounds that were excavated along the Minnesota River. I think that took them a little over 2 years. They may still be in the process. But again, this is something that faces all tribes today. And so we offer that the university should consider funding a position, and we would hope that it could be a fellowship position for a Native American to work with staff at the Minnesota Historical Society to go through these collections and to make them priority. And so moving down, we'll talk a little bit about how we as a tribe are addressing burial mound assessment work today. And we'll introduce you to the Traditional Homelands Mapping Project, where we're merging technology, oral history, and literature. Our project vision is to take a new look at an ancient land. Dakota people and historical records agree that the Dakota traditional homelands expand far beyond today's boundaries. Various kinds of records exist, but have never been collected, compared, and assembled into a comprehensive geographic information system. The resulting GIS will be ground truth, and the results formalized in state record systems. Our project team consists of the Prairie Island Indian Communities Tribal Historic Preservation Office, the Earth Systems Research Lab with the Minnesota State University at Mankato, and this is a 10-year partnership that started in 2020. The Dakota Traditional Homeland Mapping Project is a focus on the archaeological site known as the Bell Creek site, located along the Cannon River in the Cannon Valley in southeast Minnesota. And our fieldwork started in 2020. And again, what we are doing here is we are utilizing 5 non-invasive techniques. And we are hoping to collect data in a 5-year period, which justifies why non-invasive techniques should be the first methods used when evaluating burial mounds. And so we'll move down to slide 19. And the first method that we always utilize is LiDAR. And for those of you who work with this imagery, you'll know that in the last 2 years, the technology has really improved, especially with some of the LiDAR coverage here in Minnesota, allowing us to visually see the landscape in ways that was just previously that we couldn't do previously. So LiDAR is used to compare the surveyed locations of the mounds with the actual locations. Original Lewis maps shown in red, uncorrected. The mounds in the open field, as you can see, are not visible to the naked eye, but using our non-invasive techniques, we were able to relocate these burial mounds with precision, and we'll talk about how we did that. So again, the second technique that we utilize are drones and photography. Drones are used to create high resolution aerial photographs of our work area, as well as high resolution DMs. And we do flyovers in the summer and in the fall as well. And so the third technique that we use, and it's one of the most famous that you guys hear out there, is ground penetrating radar. And again, this is a non-invasive geophysical technique that sends radio waves into the ground between 50 megahertz and 1 gigahertz and allows us to understand some of the anomalies that are underground. And you'll see in the photo there are some of the graduate students applying that technique at one of our sites or at our Bell Creek site. And then we'll talk a little bit about magnetometry. This again is another non-invasive geophysical technique that measures the influence of subsurface materials that they have on local magnetic field of the earth. And again, in the picture, you'll see one of our students applying this technique. And the fifth methodology that we use is electrical resistance. Again, electrical resistance is a non-invasive way of measuring soil types and transitions, as well as allowing us to understand, again, some of the anomalies that we're seeing below ground and truth telling them with actual maps. Today is actually our first day of field school for year 3 of collecting data utilizing these 5 methodologies. Again, we are hoping to collect enough data at the end of year 5 to make a strong bid to the state to put in place standards on how burial mounds are assessed. And we would hope that the university would support the good work that's coming from all of these tribal communities when it comes to this. I think we heard other presenters talk about burial mounds. So that's a pressing issue that we all face today. And again, by our research and utilizing these techniques, we hope to set standards that will pave the way for better stewardship of these areas. So with that, I say thank you again. And thank you for allowing us to share just a little bit of the data and some of the good work we're doing down here in Southeast Minnesota. Pedamiado.